Hey everybody, how's it going? Andrew Patterson here, and I'm excited to bring you this guide on nutrition for a half Ironman or a full Ironman. It's going to be a no BS guide, as I call it, because I'm getting straight to the point. So let's get into it. Okay, so who am I? I'm Andrew. I live in Singapore. I've been here 25 years. I'm American. I've done lots of full and half Ironmans around the world. I've done lots of full and half Ironmans around the world, and I've made all the mistakes you can make, and I've had little to no guidance, at least in the beginning. So then I thought a lot, I studied a lot, and I worked a lot to figure out how to get better, how to get faster. I got a coach, I studied nutrition, most notably, and in doing so I went from back of the pack to much closer to the front. And since then, I've qualified for 4 half Ironman World Championships. I also run the IronmanHacks website and YouTube channel, as you probably know. And like I've said before, and I'll say again, I've made all the nutrition mistakes you can make. So now you don't have to. Oh, the pain. Yeah, that's it. That day, I'll never forget it. That was my first half Ironman. I'm trying to smile for the camera, but I'm in a lot of pain. It was horrible. It was truly agonizing. I totally underestimated how much this was going to take out of me. I was totally inadequately fueled and hydrated, and I was baffled because I had just done the Seoul Marathon a few weeks prior, and I was in great running shape. I mean, I had trained for, I think, 20 weeks of very intense running training and, training for a full marathon, and went to Seoul, did very well, beat my target time easily, and I was ecstatic. I couldn't have been happier with my performance. So when it came to the triathlon, my first half Ironman, I thought the run would be, that part would be easy. The swim, oh my gosh. The bike, ooh. But the run, nah, I'll do fine on the run. I've trained so hard, I've got so many miles under my belt. But no, I could hardly finish the run, and the lowest or the shortest runs I was doing was, my recovery days were like 10 km, and a standard day was 19 to 20. And, this half Ironman was comparatively short to what I was used to at the time. So this was a big wake-up call for me, and thus my quest for optimum nutrition began. Okay, they say nutrition is the 4th discipline. But you know what? It's not that complex. Basically, all you have to do is drink as much water as you can, down as much sugar as you can on the bike, and throw in some sodium without getting diarrhea or vomiting. That's all you got to know, and that's all there is to it. So, okay, we can go home now. No, I'm just kidding. But looking at this slide here, the Feynman razor from scientist Richard Feynman, basically his point here is, if people are using too much jargon and complexity to explain something, then they probably don't understand it. So why can't they cut to the point? Why can't they break it down for everybody else and make it easy to understand? That's what I'm going to do here today. Anyway, I was just saying that, all you got to do is throw some sugar and water in a bottle and you're done. In a way, that's true. Why do I say that? Because what all these products are, anyway, all the gels, mixes, and things like that, they're just flavored carbs. That's it. And what are carbs? Carbs are sugar. That's it. So does that mean you could just dump a whole bunch of table sugar in a bottle and drink it? Yeah, sure does. Or you could go with other natural sugars like maple syrup or honey. Throw in some salt for sodium and you're all set. Yep, but we like nice marketing, we like the convenient packaging, and we like the great flavors. So I don't necessarily recommend you do that. I've done it before, and many triathletes have done it, and you can do that. I'm certainly not anti-nutrition products. On the contrary, I buy lots of them. It's just more convenient, and they taste good. Later, we're going to talk a bit about flavor, too, and how that's such a key ingredient. Okay, so here's the bottom line. If I had to synthesize everything down into one slide, this would be it. I mean, I thought a lot about this topic, and I tried to figure out how to make it as easy as possible. And this bottom line chart here really talks about, it's a framework to help us zoom in on the key elements of nutrition planning. First, we need to know what it is. What are we talking about when we say nutrition? What are we saying? Well, it's only sugar, sodium, and water. Like I said earlier, sugars can be made up of maltodextrin or glucose. It's about the same thing. Glucose just is sweeter. And then fructose. So maltodextrin plus fructose equals sucrose, which is basically table sugar. Anyway, sodium usually comes from where? Sodium chloride, which is salt, or sodium citrate. Still sodium. And water is water. So that's all it is, just in different packaging and forms. And that's the how. How do you get it in? How do you ingest them? How do you consume them? Is it through gels? Is it through drinks? Is it through chews? Is it through bars? There's lots of different forms these products come in. Some are more convenient than others. Some taste better than others. Some go down easier. Some are cheaper. Some have different, people endorsing them, different marketing. The packaging is different. The pricing is different. But it's largely up to you. What do you like? What can you afford? What's available in your area? So that's what it comes down to. Okay, now as we go down, we get more specific and a little bit more complex. Now the when. So when do you eat and drink all this sugar and salt? Well, to start with, you do it before your event. I say on here, before you can't. That means before you can't eat it means that later on in the swim, you can't eat it. So do it before that. On the run, you kind of can eat it, but not so easily. So to mitigate that, where do you do it? On the bike. So when you do it is when you can, and also at regular intervals, right? So basically the frequency of our consumption has to be somewhat regular. It has to be, you can't just down it all in one gulp, right? You've got to space it out. Sometimes people put timers on their Garmin's every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes. Whatever works for you is fine. And the third part about the when is to the end. So try your best to keep fueling right up to the end of the race, meaning the run, even if it just means drinking water on the run. Next, now we're getting into the real complexities here, the how much. This is a bit trickier, but how much will be a reflection of how much you, A, expend, your exertion. That's based on your wattage, that's based on your metabolism, that's based on your size, and that's really your weight as well as could be consolidated in there into exertion. And B, how much your gut or digestive system can handle. How much of what can it handle? Some people can't take on certain foods without feeling some horrible distress. Other people can. Some people reject it out this way, and some people reject it out that way. Anyway, that's what it's coming down to. So that's the bottom line. We'll get into more details in a minute. Okay, so a few more rules here, a few more rules to help frame your thinking. You can come back to these rules of thumb if you're unsure. For example, if you're unsure how many carbs to go for per hour, do you need 60, 70, 80, 90, whatever it is, but you really don't know, just err on more than less. If you think 80's been good and you're not sure, you think you can handle more, try 90. But don't go down. So err on the high side. Now, I'm not saying you should eat what's in this picture here. Actually, that's what you should be eating after your race, okay? That's fine. Same with sodium. If you don't know if you should take in 800 milligrams per hour or 1,000, choose 1,000, right? And if you're not sure what to order after the race, like I said, the buffet you see below beats anything a la carte. More is better. So, I already explained this, but just to go into a bit more detail, some pros are going up to 150, 160, even more grams of carbs per hour. But they're metabolizing 3 or 4 grams per minute. at high wattages. You can start with 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour, more if you're bigger or more powerful. Not so much if you have a sensitive stomach or if you're smaller. If you don't take on enough, though, you'll dehydrate, you'll bonk, you'll cramp. And those are kind of catastrophic situations. Those are situations where there's no coming back, usually. But if you take on too much, guess what? You pee more, you vomit more, you poo more. Those things are acceptable. And they even make you feel better after you do them. So err on the high side, not the low side. Be self-sufficient like this astronaut. Don't expect the race organizers to cater to exactly what you want. In fact, don't expect them to cater to anything. Even if on the website they say they'll have Gatorade or Martin or something that you might like, doesn't mean your nutrition programs are done, plan is done. Doesn't mean you can rely on them having it. Pack and plan your own nutrition, just like this astronaut. Well, I doubt he's eating, but he's got oxygen. Okay, I'll never go to a race without my own nutrition. I buy it in advance, well in advance. I pack it in my suitcase. I protect it. And I'm not going to hope it'll be available for sale at the race expo. It may not be, right? I may not be able to pick it up there at the race expo the day before. And like I said, I'm not going to rely on what they have on the course. Even if I like it, even if I'm used to it, it may run out. Or somehow it just may not work for me. But I know the stuff I'm packing will work for me. Simple. And the third big rule, fuel while you can. This is a road between Nevada and Oregon in the US, where I'm from. I'm from Oregon. So we've driven through here a number of times, going south from Nevada up to eastern Oregon, southeastern Oregon. It's really just pure desert up there. But when you see this, man, you'll fill up your tank, no matter how expensive it is. Think about your triathlon fueling in a similar way. Fill it up while you can. I already talked about this earlier in the big chart. Fuel when you can, eat when you can't. I mean, eat before you can't. So we covered this above when we said you can eat before you can't. Basically, what you're doing is you're topping up your glycogen stores when you can. Your muscles and your liver contain glycogen, the sugar that your body needs for your cells to create energy. So that sugar needs to be as high as possible before your race. Okay, on top of those three rules, here are the 3 F's, which contribute to 3 factors for successful fueling: form, frequency, and flavor. Form is liquid, right? Liquid, gel, chews, bars. We talked about those earlier. In this case, you have the Excellent M's cookies, which are a little bit hard to carry on the bike and definitely hard to eat on the run. I like them after a race. Okay, but yeah, the form. What form are you taking them in? If you're taking them in a form that you can't carry on the bike, you can't carry on the run, then you need to rethink that. You need to consider the form. Are you going to drink it? Or are you going to chew it? Okay, so the tactile feel and the sensory pleasure of chewing things does exist once you've been taking too many gels or too many fluids. So I do like to drink as much as I can, but I also like that reward. I also like that sensation of chewing something. You might be different. Test it. Frequency, we talked about it earlier. How frequently you fuel is critical. Not huge gulps. The more regular, the better in a way. But also at a macro level, frequency in terms of the day before, the breakfast of, and then, spreading out to even post-race recovery. Flavor, always underrated. Some people can really tolerate terribly tasting nutrition, myself included. I've mixed up all types of things in one concoction of a bottle that tastes horrible, and I've still been good with it. Other people would vomit if they had that. But try to find some really tasty products that you can, look forward to, especially if it's like a gel that you really love, a certain flavor. just save it for the end as rewards. So there are certain gels from Hammer and from Goo that I try not to buy too many of because I just want them for special occasions. So I save that for the end. You may not be able to palate your other gels by that time. It just may feel so revolting and disgusting that, strategically introducing a great flavor could be all you need in order to take it, which could, who knows, it could save your race sometime. So this matters. Okay, now we're not even into the substance here. We've got 12 points to cover here. We've got 12 main topics that we're going to cover. And these are more or less sequential, at least the first half. So they kind of take you through the nutrition needs step by step. Let's get into them. I'll just go through them really fast. I think you can already read them. But pretty much the first 6 are sequential. 7 and 8 are digestive. 9 is actually setting up your plan, which is really the core point here. 10 is testing. 11 is how you carry your nutrition. And 12 is a backup plan. Always have a backup plan. So what are you going to eat the day before? This is something that, most athletes know of as carbo loading. And yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to eat lots of carbs. That's the spaghetti you see. What are you going to avoid? You're going to avoid meats. You're going to avoid heavy, greasy, oily things. I mean, you can have meat. It's fine. But, try not to eat too many foods that digest slowly or that are going to stick in your, digestive system. So pasta, rice, breads, potatoes, things like that are great. And like I said before, you can't produce as much power without full glycogen in your muscles and liver. So top it up now. Okay, so now it's the morning. You had a good meal last night. You also drank a lot of water and hopefully had some electrolytes. Same deal today. Like last night's meal, avoid anything too greasy. Probably avoid too much dairy. Personally, I'm okay with it. You may not be. Some people are sensitive to that. Drink lots of water, electrolytes, sodium. Also bring in some caffeine if you drink coffee. Even if you don't, it's still a good idea. Everyone else is doing it and it helps you. So remember, those carbs are really necessary now. Don't skimp on breakfast. You have to fuel for the work required. And so think about what's coming. A hard swim, a hard bike, and a hard run. Keep your glycogen up. Keep your energy up. And the way to do it is carbs. Now you've had breakfast. You probably have visited transition, pumped up your bike tires, walked around, said hi to your friends, whatever. You know how it goes. It may have been an hour before you had breakfast. You may have had to eat at home or at a hotel and then travel to the race site. It may be 2 hours. It may be 3 hours. It could be quite some time. So have some gels on you. Have 1 or 2 gels by the water while you're standing here. I took this photo in South Africa, and I think I can spot a few bottles, at least 3 bottles in this crowd. People are drinking water. Pee if you can. Yeah, like I said, eat a gel, then probably drink the water after the gel. Yeah, about peeing, by the way, if you can't find a place to go, you can just go in the water. Everybody does it at the beach. Or if it's a river or a lake, it's pretty standard. What else are you going to do? Well, what else you're going to do is you're going to go in the wetsuit. Probably everyone does that too, right? No big deal, really. We had to stand here for probably an hour. Most people just peed right then and there in their wetsuits. It's better than holding it during the swim. Okay, now you've done your swim. You had a few gels beforehand. Of course, you didn't eat during the swim. And now you're on the bike. So there are tons of brands out there. What you're going to eat on the bike really depends on you, like I said earlier. So find what works in your area and start testing it out well before your race. Another word here I'll say, of course you had to transition between your swim and your bike. Should you be eating there? Well, personally, I say no because I like to simplify and I like fast transitions. But it's not wrong to have some backup fuel there to have some gels there. Maybe you didn't want to swim with gels in your pocket and you want to stuff some in your rear pocket on the bike. You could have those at transition and you could put them in your pocket. So that's cool. But in general, I try to do my transitions as fast as possible. You're going to have 2 or 3 hours on the bike. You might as well use that time to eat. 2 in 1, right? We'll get into the specifics of what you should eat and how much you should eat in a minute. Okay, so like I said, you want to take the majority of your fuel on during the bike. You can carry the most at this point. You're there for the longest duration. And of course, it's easier to eat while seated than while running or while swimming. Furthermore, you may not be able to eat on the run. So, and I'll talk about that later. So concentration on nutrition, concentrate your nutrition efforts on the bike. Now, looking at this chart here, the times in each discipline, these are like my times, right? Generally, how long I take in each discipline. We're looking at about 35 to 45 minutes in the swim. I'm pretty slow there. We're looking at around 2 hours and 30 minutes on the bike and an hour and 40, 45, depending on the situation, on the run. Those are proportionate for me. Yours may vary, but the big point is look at the bulk of time there. If you can satisfy and solve for your nutrition in the blue and preload for the pink, you're settled. Because you will have just had breakfast for the purple, right? So think of it this way. You got a lot of time there. Now, the caloric estimates of what I'd consume, well, zero in the swim, maybe up to 1,200 on the bike. The run, I might only be able to get down 3 gels. Think of a gel as being 100 calories. So this is the way I like to mitigate my inability to eat much on the run. Do it on the bike. Now, this one's about hydration. Of course, you need to stay hydrated. There are going to be a lot of factors that come into play. Things like heat, humidity, how well acclimatized you are to the local weather, how much you sweat, how much salt is in your sweat, right? So those are all variables you're going to have to think about on your own. Obviously, if you're not acclimatized, then you need to bring in more water. What's going to happen? The worst that's going to happen is you're going to pee, right? So, like I said, you'd rather have to pee than have to be dehydrated. Now, while I said stopping, I have said that stopping at aid stations is kind of a waste of time. It's also better than dehydrating. So one thing the aid station should all have is water. So don't rule out the possibility that you'll stop. It's always better to overhydrate than underhydrate, like I said. You might not have to stop. It might just be more of a situation of you pull up next to the aid station and you reach your hand out like this, right? And they hand you the bottles. There are going to be all kinds of volunteers out there with bottles. Don't go too fast. Don't cause a crash. Don't drop a bottle. Come in there smoothly, grab the bottle, chug it, and chuck it. That's what I like to do. Chug and chuck. Okay, so the more water you drink, the lower sodium concentration in your blood becomes. So you do need to ensure you take on sodium as well. Normally, 800 milligrams per hour or per liter of sweat lost. If you lose 1 liter of sweat per hour, that's a benchmark. That's a good amount. 800 to 1,000. There are plenty of sodium supplements on the market which you can either combine with your other nutrition or you can consume separately. So if you know you're a heavy sweater, go above 1,000. If you know the salt content of your sweat is heavy, go above 1,000. If you know you're both, go above 1,000. Maybe go up to 1,500. I've gone up to 2,000 plus before. No, sorry. Yes, I have 2,000 plus before. It may be excessive, but I'd rather overdo it than underdo it. So now what about peeing? I talked about how if you overhydrate, you might have to pee, and that's better than dehydrating. Well, you can pee on the bike. Yes, I do it while cycling. It can be a challenge. Just make sure there's nobody behind you. They won't appreciate your warm spray. But when you're done, try to rinse yourself off and your bike with some water. Hopefully you have some extra water that you can grab at an aid station and just spray yourself off. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Okay, so here we see my friend Jamie Meldrum, who unfortunately isn't with us anymore. But he and I trained quite a bit. This was us training for a full Ironman, and we did a whole bunch of long efforts, 160, 170, 180 kilometer bike rides with brick runs afterwards, and we fueled like we would when we raced. And he and I exchanged a lot of nutrition tips as we experimented with trial by error races around the Asia Pacific region, Vietnam, Australia. We did these together, Malaysia, Indonesia. But what I'm here to show you is that a typical setup on a TT bike or a tri bike has hydration in the front, right? So it has up there, it's got that purple circle surrounding the bottle. So it has hydration in the front. Then usually it has 1 to 2 bottles in the frame, which you see there in my second circle. And obviously 1 or 2 bottles behind the seat, which you see there in the third one. And in this case, he's also got a bottle in his rear pocket. So you do have at least 4 places. And also down the jersey. I've thrown things down the jersey before because it's a good, it's a secure place to store a bottle. If it's like your precious nutrition that you don't want to lose, you can hold something down there. You'll probably want to keep your front bottle as plain water, I think, and concentrate 1 to 2 bottles with all the fuel you need for the race. Anything else can be considered extra. Though I'm not a huge fan of using aid stations, I will pick up bottles from there, and I'll get water, but I'll never really stop at the aid stations. So in terms of nutrition on the bike, a few case studies here. Jonathan, 75 kilos, 150 something pounds, 1.75 meters tall, maybe like 5.59, something like that. 225 FTP. He's got a bit of a sensitive GI system. He sweats a lot, but it's not very salty. The plan we've given him is 3 Martins because he's been drinking that a lot in his training and he likes it. So that's 3 of those and 4 UCAN hydrates. We'll give him a total of 960 calories, 2,700 milligrams of sodium, and 241 grams of carbs, which down at the bottom you can see his targets. I think if I use this pointer, you can see down here his targets were 300 calories, 800 milligrams, and 90 grams of carbs. So we went considerably over. We're at 1,000, almost 1,100 of sodium, which is fine because he's going to be racing in a humid climate. And we're over his calories to 384. It may be high considering he has a sensitive GI system. I may tune it down a bit, remove one of these Martins, and throw in probably 2 gels or something like that. But this is an idea of what you could come up with. And by the way, this chart you see here is done using the race calculator I have on the website, IronmanHacks.com/nutrition calculator. Sorry, not race calculator, nutrition calculator, where you can add up all of your nutrition based on how long you want to spend, and then you change the numbers of servings here, and the numbers will reflect accordingly. If they're green, then they're all within 10%. Over here, we've got Laura, a lot smaller, 55 kilos and 1.5 meters, a lot lower FTP, so she doesn't need to put out nearly as much. She doesn't need to consume nearly as much because she's not putting out nearly as much energy, right? But she has a tough GI system. In this case, we've put her at 250 calories per hour, which is fairly high for someone of her size, but only 65 grams of carbs. And since she's a light sweater, we're just going to go with 800 milligrams of sodium. We've given her Hammer Perpetuum, 2 sachets, and 4 Precision Hydration 1000s, right? So this is what she wants. This is the nutrition she has on hand. This is what she wants to experiment with. And as you can see, the numbers are dialed in very nicely to the hour within 10% either way. So these are just some examples. But she should test this. She should try this early on and make sure this is going to work for her before she goes ahead and races. All right. So now let's say you've done the bike, you've hit your nutrition. You may not feel too appetized at the moment. You may not really want to eat. So when you're planning, you may think, oh, I'll have this much on the bike and then this much on the run, X number of gels on the run. But it's likely that you won't want to eat those. You'll, due to overall physical stress, general loss of appetite, maybe some GI problems, maybe some flavor fatigue, any other factors are just going to dictate that you won't want a gel. At this point, your body won't be craving sugar and carbs. It will be craving fat, honestly. A cheeseburger is going to taste good at the end. So you won't have the appetite for it. But this is when you'll be glad you consumed so much on the bike. Okay, so you're going to have aid stations, usually every few kilometers. This is me actually in where is this, Langkawi full Ironman, and I'm carrying that bottle of water. My appetite is gone, but I'm downing the water like crazy. So eat at aid stations, and if you're ever going to walk during your run, then do them at the aid stations. Do two at one, right? Kill two birds with one stone. So walk and also drink. Walk and also grab some jelly beans, grab some watermelon, grab what they have at that aid station. That's more important, than anything. Fueling regularly at these aid stations, if you can, with that variety, is going to be important. But drinking is more important. Drinking water is more important than anything. Now, carrying gels and nutrition can always be tricky. You can use a bottle, and some people carry a bottle of nutrition with them as they run. Lionel Sanders has done it. A lot of people have done it, but I haven't done it. It's just not what I've done. It can work. You can use a race belt with those little loops in it and stuff some gels in those. You can do that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Or in the pockets of your tri-suit. In the back of mine, I had a few gels. And, I've finished races where I haven't even consumed it. Probably not ideal. Probably should consume it if you can. But you won't always have the appetite. So anyway, that's what you should think about for the run. Key is water, to be honest. Now, I talked about this numerous times, on-course nutrition. This is St. George, Utah in the World Championships 2022. Now look at that little girl. She's a volunteer. But like I said, don't rely on what they have on course. Be self-sufficient. I have seen them run out of water, believe it or not. And that was in the blazing Vietnam heat. And it's terrible that they run out of water. So yeah, and I've also asked for plain water before and been given a bottle that had, electrolytes in it. And that was weird. And it was something I hadn't tested. This was in Bintan. Risky move, right? And of course, I've seen bike crashes at aid station. And of course, stopping slows you down. So I think I've made my point. Don't consume this unless you absolutely have to. On the run, like you see here, it's slightly different. You notice the cyclists in the back, they're coming into T2 to get off the bike. So this is immediately coming into the run. That's why you probably don't need to be drinking anything at your transition when you've got these guys supporting you right out there at the end of T2. Okay, so I talked about peeing enough already. We talked about it a little bit, but I'm gonna get into it. I talked to you when you should pee before the swim, no doubt. On the bike, do it while going downhill. Make sure there's no one behind you. Downhill is easier because you don't have to pedal, and somehow pedaling and peeing, I don't know why it's not that easy. You can even do it on the run. If it's a wet and sweaty race with showers, I've done it there. But if it's like a dry race, I wouldn't do it, right? Stop at a porta potty. But just don't do it in the open because there are rules against indecent exposure. Now, Mark Allen, arguably the greatest triathlete of all time. This is him competing in the 80s. I interviewed him, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about pee. Let's see what he says.
Oh no! You guys pee?
Let's see how comfortable you've got with this crowd so far. When we're racing, we're swimming, biking, running, and we're peeing. I don't think you ever stop.
Oh no! You guys pee?
So what's your take on that, and what's your advice on the 3 disciplines during a race?
Well, this is a very human question, a very basic question. If you have to pee, you have to pee, you know, and you got it. And it's on the, you know, like on the bike, if you don't pee, that's a problem because you're not getting in enough fluid. The run depends, but for sure, like if you're doing an Ironman and you're not peeing on the bike, you're having a problem already. And so what do? Well, you know, depends on your modesty and all that kind of stuff. I just, you know, honestly, I just stopped pedaling and then squirted with a water bottle. You know, my cycling shoes didn't smell so good after those Ironmans. Let me just say that.
So when you say you pee on the bike, you really mean you pee on the bike?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, I can't. Dave, stop for a sec. I gotta go pee, man. It'll be quick. I'll just take this skin suit off, and you know, it'll only be like 3 or 4 minutes. So it's hold on, don't go anywhere. The dude is not gonna wait for me. He's gonna go, yeah, dude, you go, take your time because I'm gonna go win this race now.
So that's about pee. Now, this gets more serious. This is about poo. So digestive discomfort, gastrointestinal issues. It's bad, right? But again, it's not as bad as muscle cramps or dehydration, which basically cannot be solved. You know, once you have cramps, once you're dehydrated, it's too late and you're in trouble. GI issues can often be solved with a trip to the toilet. Let it go, and then you feel much better. I've seen athletes, in fact, most recently, one of the top women in St. George at the World Champs, you know, with a big brown mess coming down their back leg, the back of their leg. I think she was 8th or 9th in the finishing standings in the World Championships. How do you avoid it? Don't eat new things on race day, and don't eat more than you've tested in training. Interestingly, who you see here is Julie Moss, who in fact was married to Mark Allen, who we just saw earlier. Yeah, this is the famous, her famous finishing at Kona one year back in the early 80s. And yeah, it's pretty dramatic and pretty agonizing. You see her shorts are not exactly immaculate. So now we're really getting into the heart of what we need to do. We need to figure out our carbs, calories, and sodium. And the easiest way to think about this is per hour. Obviously, if you think about it per race or per bike, it's not apples to apples comparison between one person and another who have different durations. So we just think about it per hour. So a good starting point is going to be what you see down below, 240, you see on my screen here, 240 calories, 60 grams of carbs, or 800 milligrams of sodium. If you're bigger, you can go up. So these are hourly amounts. You got to go out and do 3 to 4 hour rides and test out a few of these products, because different products will have, they'll have different tastes, they'll have different nutritional values, and you may like some, you may not like others. But what I really think you need to do is go more than 2 hours, because anything less than 2 hours won't tell you a lot, because you'll be able to run off of your muscles and your liver's glycogen. You need to deplete those stores and run off of this external fuel. That's what you're testing. So figure out what you like: liquids, gels, solids. How do you sweat? How much do you sweat? Are you salty? These are all variables. What we can do is we can go to the calculator, and I'm going to play you a short video to show you how it works. This is the IronmanHacks nutrition calculator that you can find on the IronmanHacks website, and you can go directly there and use it yourself. So I'm just going to play you that now.
I'm going to show you how to use the IronmanHacks nutrition calculator to help you plan your triathlon nutrition. First, go to ironmanhacks.com, which you see here. Then go into Nutrition Calculator under Nutrition, and you're at the calculator. So the first thing you're going to want to do is enter your bike or run duration. I'm going to go with the bike. Let's say I plan on doing the bike on this half Ironman in 2 hours and 30 minutes. That's my goal. So there's a little tooltip here to help you with that. I generally want around 300 calories per hour, and I need a lot of sodium, which I've calculated to be about 1,200 milligrams per hour. I'm going to go high on the carbs at about 90 grams per hour, and I've figured these things out already. So if you don't know these things, you'll need to get these sorted out. Now, protein, sugar, potassium, calcium, magnesium, caffeine, these are all optional. Actually, anything's optional, but these are hidden because generally it's these big three that people want. Now, I'm going to choose the nutrition that I usually use. I like Hammer Perpetuum. I like that stuff a lot. And let's see, I have some Pure gels lying around. There we go. Pure, yeah, that one. I have a few of those. And I'll be using Precision Hydration 1500 in my bottles. So that's essentially the products I'm going to be taking. But I also know that at the event, they have Gatorade Endurance. I know they're serving that on the course. So I'll just put that in to see what happens. Now, I could go here if I really wanted to search by bar, chew, drink, all these different types of mixes. I could do that, but that's not what I'm doing. And I'm just going to calculate nutrition. Okay, so now I've got a list of all the nutrition products that I added, and the default is 1 serving. What we're trying to do is make these hourly sums hit a green number. So I'm going to say I want 3 servings of Hammer Perpetuum. How many gels should I take? Let's just go with 4. So I'm sort of putting in random numbers here. I'm going to take 3 pH 1500s, and let's go with 2 bottles of Gatorade. Okay, now under here, I see my calories are way high, my sodium's high, and my carbs are high. Everything's high. So maybe I can scale those gels back to 2. That doesn't change a lot. Let me bring the Hammer down to 2. Okay, now we're getting closer. Let's skip the Gatorade. I don't want to rely on the course fuel. That's never a good idea. I want to be independent and self-reliant. Now I have too many calories. My sodium's good. The green means it's within 10%, and my carbs are good. But I only have 75 too many, so it's not that big of a deal. What if I did 3 hammers and 0 gels? I'd go with 3 hammers. I'd rather have too many calories than not enough. Knowing me, knowing my stomach, I can handle it. Other people may not, so you need to do that, make that decision for yourself. Now, if you want to add your own product, let's say you have other fuels, you can go up here. Let's say you want to add something that's not in my database. So right now there are more than 200 fuels in here. There are more than 200 different products, but maybe you have something that I don't have, or my database isn't complete. So you can add it here. What you do is you select the product type. Let's say it's a sodium mix, and the name is Element, whatever it is. You take the name off the package, enter the serving size, the calories, enter all these details, and add product, and it goes into the database. And the beauty of this is it's added for everybody. So not only can you use it, but other people who may run across that same product or who may use that same product can use it. You could even add a custom mix that you may have. So now that you've chosen your correct servings, number of servings for each type of food, all you need to do is download results. Now I've just downloaded the results, and it has produced an image for me of those results, which I can save. I can send it to myself. I can save it to my phone. I can print it out, whatever I want. This becomes my nutrition sheet for my race. Now, if you really want, you can save these to an upcoming race through the app. But that's a different video, and I'll explain that separately. But essentially what you do is you tag this to an upcoming race, and this goes in a checklist of items that you bring to that race. But for now, this is what we've got. This is the web-based version. It's free to use. It's free for anybody, and I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, testing your plan. This is me testing. You do need to test it, right? So what you're going to have to do is take a few weeks or a few months to get it right. Go out on long rides, hopefully with runs afterwards, like simulating the actual race, brick runs, and test the nutrition that you've chosen. It could be a certain brand, it could be something homemade, or it could even be Coke and Snickers. I don't care. But you know the #1 rule to racing, right? Don't try anything new on race day, especially not nutrition. Now, here's where it isn't wrong to train with a fuel that you know the course will have. So like if they have Gatorade and Martin, you can train with those. I'm not saying you'll be reliant on those courses, on the course's nutrition, but if you have to fall back on it, at least you'll know it won't mess you up. And finally, some people are whey sensitive and some people are not. So it's not really that big of a deal. They can handle any foods. It's just a personal call you're going to have to make. But the point here is plan and then test. Now, logistics. I already told you I'd bring a few gels to the beach and eat those there, but I won't carry them in my tri-suit on the swim. Actually, I have had extra gels in my tri-suit, and I have carried them on the swim, believe it or not, and they were still there. At T1, I'll already have my bike racked and loaded with all the bottles on it and all the gels in its compartments. If you need to, you can have gels in T1 and pick them up and put them in your rear pockets, like I said earlier. Or maybe you'll have a race belt with gels in them. But that's not very aero, and in some races, you don't need a race belt on the bike. On the bike, I personally like to have one bottle just of plain water, and then I spread my concoction of carbs across 2 bottles in case I lose one of them. And I have lost them before on in multiple races, and it can be catastrophic. Then on the run, as I explained, I may throw a few gels in my rear pockets, and that's about it. Nothing wrong with running with a bottle in a race belt. Hey, Lionel Sanders does it sometimes, especially if you're not used to the heat wherever you may be racing if it's hot. What we see here is the legend Tim Don's bike in Vietnam. And you see he's got nutrition in a bottle, and he's got underneath that, he's got that huge hydration tank with the hose, the straw coming up front. Pretty cool. Okay, backup nutrition. You can see through the clear, translucent spot right here, I've got some gels. That's backup nutrition for a race. So I've already mentioned I've lost bottles before. And if you split your nutrition between 2 bottles and you lose one, at least you'll have another. But at that point, you'll need extra. So I can fit 4 to 5 gels right here in my bike storage, which I can take as a backup plan. I usually transfer those to my rear pockets for the run too, so they do serve another purpose. But back to losing bottles. If you have bottles behind your saddle, you may have had them launch out before, right here. They may just go flying. And the original bottle cages I had on this bike were the Canyon ones, and they launched out like rockets. That's a huge road hazard to anybody behind you. But then I changed them to the X-Lab Gorilla cages, and that solved it. But I have to use certain bottles that are sort of softer and not rigid. So your backup plan, you got to test it in advance. Test everything. By now, these 3 points should be apparent. Plan your nutrition. Test what works. Test your pockets. Test your bike storage. Test your bottles, your cages. Then see if you can simplify. Don't have 18 different products. Just go for 2 or 3 max. Don't clutter T1 and T2 with bottles and food. Not like I did in my first 70.3. I had a big old bottle and all kinds of snacks. Don't give yourself extra things to think about and stress over. Sure, if you want to have backup food in transition, you can, but it's really just one more thing to worry about, one more variable, one more point of failure. Simplify. PTS, plan, test, simplify. Okay, so wrapping up here. Summary point 1, how much nutrition you take can depend on your weight, your exertion, and your gut. So you could be really little and have a really low FTP, then you don't need much nutrition. And your gut could be really sensitive. Wow, then actually you hardly need anything, right? But if you're exerting massive power and you're a massively large person, you do need more energy. You do need more nutrition. Number 2, 3 big rules to talk about. More is better. Err on the high side. Number 2, eat when you can. Eat when it's not available. Eat before food is not available. And number 3, be self-sufficient. Last point, PTS, plan, test, simplify. Plan it. Use my app, my calculator, my nutrition calculator on the website. Google Triathlon nutrition calculator. Mine comes up on top. Use that. Plan your nutrition on an hourly basis that way. Test it to death. Fail early, you can fail in training, but don't fail in the race. And then see if you can simplify. Fewer things, less junk, less clutter, less cognitive load. Make it easy on yourself. Fewer points of failure. That's it, you guys. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and look for IronmanHacks, as well as please go into our Facebook page, IronmanHacks Facebook group. And yes, I thank you very much. You may email me at andrew@ironmanhacks.com, and I will reply. And I want to support you. I want to help you. And any feedback you have, please send it to me. I'd love to hear it so I can improve and make things better for everybody. Thanks a lot.